and welcome everybody. And thank you for spending your Saturday with us. I thought that it would be appropriate at this time to talk a little bit about the idea of the world that we're living in right now, that the way that we are conducting business has changed for all of us on some level of degree. And we were doing a lot of research, within our organization to see, well, what are the futures and what can we make of the futures that are ahead of us instead of waiting for it to happen to us. So this presentation is going to be more of a reflection about how we've looked at the problem of COVID-19 and started to take a look at how we're implementing in the field through design, construction, and then also into the facility management and operations because of the work that we do. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen over here. So let me see if I can get this going. And all right, I can actually pass the first test. So we're going to talk a little bit about technology in this and innovation, which I thought, again, was appropriate for a hackathon, except that, sometimes this topic of what we're calling the age of the pandemics is associated with opinion, a lot of it. And sometimes it actually goes down the slippery path of pointing fingers and blame games between countries at this point, when what we're really talking about is humanity against a common threat. And that threat, again, has different degrees of severity, but it's still a threat. And I'm hoping that as you start seeing, our discoveries, both from a science and a data aspect, along with a little bit of entertainment, that we can start to at least find common ground to have conversations as to what's going to be best for you, your family, your business, and the greater good. So with that, I've been invited by Damon and the community to participate and help organize the AEC Hack Fund for at least the first two, and then was over in London kicking off our European presence, and have been an active supporter, cheerleading and whatnot ever since. I find the community to be an ever-evolving, amazing group of folks that care. And I think that, at the end of the day, that as we all come from different, aspects of our wonderful industry that is so diverse, that I'm really proud of how we have people that are willing to take their own time and to give back, to the industry. There's a lot of people that take, what I've found over the past 7 years is that this is a giving community. And again, just want to make sure that as we start moving forward with this online experience, the next one that we'll be talking about will be in the fall, and there'll be a lot more detail as we get through this particular hackathon. But I just want to say well done, everyone that is involved. I'm glad you're there. And more importantly, we are halfway through the first week, and I know that the organizers have learned more about Zoom than they ever wanted to, and the other platforms, Slack and Teams and whatnot. So just well done. So with that, my name's Paul. I am an architect, a real one, not a software architect, although I've been involved with tech since the beginning of my career. I did work study as I was going to school for architecture with IBM. That gave me a lot of exposure to designing trade show booths for things like Comdex, PC Expo back in the day, things like that, which really piqued my interest in tech. Yes, I can rip apart an AS400, R6000, or a PS2 architecture, microchannel architecture unit like no one's business, and also know how to install, and configure. So the hardware and software side of things is my bones. But as a licensed professional, throughout my career, I was always wondering why we did not create buildings as a computer, because I knew all the components, except that we just put it, into a piece of silicone plastic, and people stamped their brands on it, Dell, Compaq, IBM, whatever, right? But what we're starting to see now is that move towards intelligence that can be part of an inanimate object. things come to life and it almost seems like magic. I mean, who would have thought that I'd be able to talk to a smart speaker that knows a lot about me and starts to anticipate my needs? This genius platform in the commercial sense, things like Alexa. So we've come a long way from separating things, and I think that that's what our business does, is that we collide industries, we collide ideas. We've been known to be those developers of what's called smart cities, scale it to an urban scale, not just a single building. So that's what we do. We've been very fortunate to ride the wave, and I can tell you right now, I've never been busier in my career than this period. So with that, let's see why. Like all of you, I've had my skepticisms about this age that we're in of misinformation, the Orwellian way of doublespeak, the idea of what is this thing? And then coming up with, people come up with conspiracy theories that are sitting behind their keyboards like, Silicon warriors, that they're absolutely right, that there's black and white about these things. And it's not. This is a pandemic, one that is driven right now by fear on a lot of scales, and in certain cases, denial. So what our organization did was we wanted to get into a different type of mode. Let's unplug from the daily drumbeat of misinformation or information that is suited to a person's way of thinking. In other words, don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? We've heard that phrase. So we decided to just take a look at, how about some broad strokes? And ask questions like, why is it in the US that when we do social distancing, we're at 6 feet, but over in Europe, they're either at 1.5 meters or at 2 meters? Who made that up, right? So then we start taking a look at, well, all right, what is social distancing and why do we need to do that? And why is it that the majority of our industry is now helping businesses reconfigure their floor plans, like in the case of a restaurant, which directly affects their profits? Or lack thereof. So why is it that you have to have every other table or 2 seats in between each other at a sporting event, or every other cubicle, and then have, that is spaced? And then there's even people thinking about shift work to come back into buildings in urban centers. I'm here to tell you that's all bullcrap, all of it. The idea of social distancing is for outdoor distance. Anything indoors, I don't know how it got out of the bag. I don't know how it was promoted, but it does not matter. It's all going to be perception. So if you are going to do it as a business, you're doing it for the perception of people's fear, which is a legitimate design measure. That's okay. But when you get down to the science of the data, I'm going to show you, it does not matter, okay? So you can continue going on your business and helping your local restaurants, socially distance. But if you're in an interior situation, not the outdoors, but the interior, remember what you're doing it for design. You may be doing it just for the perception so that people feel safe and that they can trust the environment that they're eating, drinking, and socializing in. Again, a legitimate design measure, but don't do it because you think that you're combating COVID-19. Okay? So this idea of science and data then got us into thinking, well, let's really think about why is this thing so contagious? What's the difference between this thing and the flu? And what we found was, and I'm going to focus in on the science now, is that a successful infection of COVID-19 is really a simple, not even algorithm, it's almost arithmetic. It's the exposure to the virus, meaning the amount of particles, okay, droplets, some people call them, times time. So breathing, if you need 1,000 droplets of what the official name is called SARS-CoV-2, right, of infectious viral particles, okay, it's going to take you 50 minutes to be infected. Okay, if you're talking, just regular talking, it's 5 minutes. There's actually a very interesting ratio. If you are yelling or singing, like at a church choir, 50 seconds. You start seeing the ratios. So if a person sneezes or coughs, there's 200 million viral particles that go everywhere. And now we're realizing and scientifically, finding out for real that this virus, not just some of the virus, but all the virus, is an aerosol. It hangs in the air. Some falls onto the surface, but most, fall into the air. So that any environment that's enclosed with poor air circulation and a high density of people, now you know why we have big issues about opening up too early. Okay, just straight science. Again, don't get into the politics, go into the morals and ethics and freedom and all that other stuff. All very valid reasons. We can find common ground there, but the science says this is what the problem is. So let's look at the U.S. Central Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. This is their words, okay, and their diagram. So they figured out that in this one restaurant, that person A1 that you can see, which is at table A, January 24th at about 10 o'clock, on the clock face of the table. Sat at the table with 9 friends. The dinner took about an hour and a half or so. This asymptomatic carrier, no coughs, not feeling too bad, blah, 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 blah. He was sitting right by where the air diffusers, the airflow vents were blowing out, in this case, heat, okay? Now, during the summer, it could be cool, but the way that we've designed our mechanical systems are part of the problem of the spread of not just COVID-19, but of all airborne viruses. That's really important to understand because we're in the age of pandemics. COVID-19 is an iteration from our first exposure to this new form of virus called SARS, which happened in 2003. You think this is going to stop? Even if we come up with a vaccine, we haven't even come up with a vaccine for SARS yet. So just think about that. So we've got to understand that our mechanical systems have to be reimagined, Otherwise, we're just ostriches with our heads in the sand, thinking that, well, this is just going to blow over and I'm going to continue to spec out my HVAC the way I've always done it with the same types of, Neanderthal, knuckle dragging control systems. So, I don't blame the JCIs and the Siemens and our friends at Carrier and Train and, all those guys. But why? Because they're just doing their job. They're providing heating and air conditioning. And right now I live in Memphis and it's going to be 96 degrees today, 100% humidity. I love air conditioning. So I love these guys. At the same time, we all have to start rethinking how can we do controls better that help control the physical infrastructure of an air handling unit going into air ducts that are controlled by dampers and VAV boxes. We have to reimagine that because look at what it's doing. The people that were downwind of where that airflow was pushing air in order to create an ambient temperature, okay, all got infected. There were people on the other side of the restaurant that were not part of the airflow circulation where they weren't infected at all. Holy cow. By the way, I will make this PowerPoint available to you because there are hyperlinks here. So if you want to go to the Center for Disease Control's website and download these articles and see for yourself, educate yourself as to the science and the data behind this stuff, please. I think that it's well worth it. So we'll figure out where the actual PowerPoint's going to be because I know that Damon and the team are recording these things and that will be published over time. That resource will be with you. Now here's an open office plan. At this point, this isn't cubicles. This was more of a like a call center type of office. And you can see here, very, very similar type of layout of how the mechanical systems were the culprits for spreading the disease. Because of why? Because all you need is 1,000 droplets to be in your system based upon the exposure to another person, either breathing, talking, heavy breathing, yelling, singing, or sneezing and coughing. And you can see here that 92 of the 94 people became sick just because of the air handling systems, of how the air circulation pushed and infected these people, okay? So as a business that is responsible for designing buildings, pulling them up out of the ground, and then with certain parts of our real estate developments, we actually operate them, right? This becomes a really big thing because if the principle is the viral exposure for an extended period of time, even if you're 50 feet away, it's going to cause a really, really, really bad situation or exacerbate it. So what are some of the solutions? So we started taking a look at the idea of keeping social distancing inside, but not for the reasons of that it's going to protect me from infecting you. Because you all understand, like the idea of masks is not to protect you from the virus, it's to protect you from infecting others. So a form of respect. Again, not political about this, that's the science. And the data shows that when you do that, if you do get everyone doing that, it gives us enough runway or more time, because that's our big issue right now is time, until a vaccine is found out. This doesn't eradicate the virus. It's not like some magic. It's about giving us enough time that a lot of people don't get sick in order for the vaccine to be found. Again, logic, science, data, that's it. But when we come into the social distancing, we also realize that there's going to be people that don't want to go into a downtown office for various reasons. You know, they got kids, they got elderly parents, all this other stuff, and they don't want to be asymptomatic and potentially spread it. But then how do you reopen for business? How do you start living in this new world and start to be, proactive about this? So we are designing things with social distancing in mind, but we're also now starting to see that there are going to be certain types of innovations that when you put them together, like ingredients for a recipe, that recipe will start to allow people to trust each other again. I was in my local Kroger supermarket a couple of weeks ago. I was in the frozen food section, got my mask. I actually do wear gloves. I'm a geek. And I hear a person sneeze, like one of those big chews. I believe it was either the aisle next to me or the aisle over. I swear to you this happened. I've never seen people leave a supermarket as fast as everyone did. They left their carts full and ran out of the effing store. And I'm going, is that our new reality? During that time, we had a huge outbreak of pollen here in Memphis. The poor guy probably had the sniffles from allergies. And yet, wow, it was like a nuclear bomb went off. That's not the reality I want to bring my kid up in. It's not the reality I think that you all want to live in. So what are some of the things that we can do? And we start to focus in on data. What I'm about to show you here, although it does have a voiceover and some funky music, because of Zoom, I can't show it that way just for speed. I'm sure we can figure it out, but I want the message to get across that we've come up with a system that was originally developed in Europe, and it was based on mesh networking using Bluetooth communication protocols that allow different devices to talk to each other, even if they're not connected to the internet. Interesting, right? And this was made for the world of mobility. Groups like Daimler AG and others were using this technology, this patented technology of this mesh network of connecting things together so that they can then make analysis and decisions. Pretty cool. Well, these kids got really bored because they were underneath lockdown. They developed in Portugal and the UK, and they're called Hype Labs. And Hype Labs created the first really robust commercial system based upon the taxonomy of putting humans in the place of driverless cars with a mesh networking system. So now think about that. Now all of a sudden you're creating unique IDs of following a device that if in the past 2 weeks, any place where you have been has an infected person, you're alerted. That's what's called contact tracing. They decided, long after us being introduced to them, because I thought it was very interesting, that I had a lot of privacy issues with this thing. And what the business model turned out to be was that they focused in on working with private companies only because, the world of Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has their own contact tracing tool. Of course, China's famous for it. It's how they've been able to control the spread of the virus. Albeit it was done underneath the same program of what they call the social scorecard, which is a very Orwellian, black mirror, dark mirror type of, way of controlling people. I'm not a huge fan of getting that deep into things, but again, that's opinion. But the science of the data are telling the truth. They have a contact tracing app that's part of their overall surveillance program for all the citizens of China. Now, if you're in a totalitarian state, contact tracing works great. What happens when you come to a free market, like the US, the UK, Western Europe? Well, there's been huge pushback on a lot of different types of initiatives that way. But when we started to take a look at it, we said, well, what would happen if we actually then tied this together as a system that would not have any personal information except a phone number that's not associated to a name, but to a unique ID that's automatically generated. Now, all of a sudden, we're starting to get somewhere. So we were asked by friends that we work with in our core business to help with the ability for production of entertainment to happen again. TV, film production, that type of thing. In other words, open up Hollywood. And this is what we've developed. Working with Hype Labs, we've created a product called Cassandra. And Cassandra is an interesting product because it, you guys can still hear me, right? Catherine, if you can help me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good, because I just muted the bad music that's on in the background. What Cassandra does is that when you take a test and you're negative, okay, for COVID-19, you're given a green passport that's an automatically generated QR code. It's like, then you can use it to get onto a production lot, like let's say Warner Brothers Studios, who's a customer of ours. And when you go to the individual P&Ls, the different productions, so it could be a live TV studio audience, it could be a serial TV series, it could be a motion picture film. They're in enclosed areas. And what happens is you're able to use your green passport just like getting onto an airplane if you use your mobile phone, with the QR code as a boarding pass. So you're getting inside of an environment where everyone else is also green. So this means that we have a system that says, all right, we're starting to build a trust network here, because now our work, we're in discussions right now with Live Nation, Ticketmaster, and others to open up entertainment venues as well. We're not talking about this social distancing thing, which won't happen. If you're in a rave, could you imagine doing social distancing? Good luck with that, right? So what would happen though if we were able to show that within a certain period of time, of a validity period, that you have access to venues, to restaurants, bars, offices, you name it, including the NFL stadiums, who we're also talking with right now. Now, the reason why that becomes important, because that's the Passport app, which is a lot different than just contact tracing, because if something falls through the cracks, let's say you take your test, you bump into someone 2 seconds later and you're infected, but your validity period says that you're negative. We've thought about all that. Is that a perfect system? No, it's not. But guess what? We have to start the process of getting into a methodology that says, I'm not going to wait 6 hours to get onto that elevator to get up to the 34th floor of my office, because we're only allowed 2 people up and down for the entire building, right? So we got to start now trusting that the reporting systems will start to work. And if something falls through the cracks, we have the contact tracing to back it up. So that's what we're doing in Hollywood. It's a pretty interesting program because we call it Contact Tracing Plus, which allows the different types of risk mitigation, of saying that we need to start to say that if I see a person inside of a bar and they sneeze, but they've already been accepted into that venue, that I'm not going to run out because I think they have COVID-19. It comes down to almost something that simple. What we've also done, though, and I think which is cool, is that we have focused in on the private market, again, using the data-centric model based on science, that we're now opening up all the fulfillment centers and protecting the 575,000 employees of Amazon, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Unilever, and now Hollywood. This is a big deal because the data in behind that is now also, and again, this is not private data, but it's the data that resides on your phone controlled in the cloud, right? So the routing, how we measure every 2 weeks, how we roll people's data off the servers and is destroyed, because after 2 weeks, the contact tracing, it doesn't matter, right? So we're thinking through a lot of this. It's not perfect, but we do feel that the brand and how we've been able to get it to this point is really, 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 really important from the standpoint of showing success. We go live next week for the Hollywood implementation. We also deal with the equivalent of first aid kits called PPE kits. This personal protective equipment. I thought I'd never say those 3 words together ever in my life, but wow, has it become important. So yeah, between the technology piece and now we're starting to hack through, what does it mean to get X amount of gloves and masks and thermometers out to these different production sites and learning over time literally we're doing this as mass customization where, a person orders that we are on a 16-week shoot. We're going to be at this location and we approximate 50 people on set at any one time. We're learning about what that ebb and flow is. And it's going to be a really interesting exercise because what we're doing is laying the groundwork about how we're going to open up our own facilities as they come up out of the ground. So let's get into the design piece because this is really where I think the rubber meets the road, especially when it comes to AEC, right? So our example of data is a star example. We're seeing a lot of different examples out there. In the interest of time, I wanted to cut it down so that we could get into the design talk of this because this is where things get very interesting. There are really well-intentioned folks out there that are doing some remarkable work, especially on the design side of things. And I don't want to take anything away from them. But again, if they can back it up with the science and the data, I think their designs could even be improved further, right? But as a first glance, let's throw something down on the table. And this happened in March. This particular exercise's flowchart was done for a consortium of restaurants in San Francisco, some that were about to open and got shut down, and others are long-established groups. And what we're looking at is this cautious climb back period. And wow, is this thing telling it's like pretty damn accurate. Unfortunately, it looks like that from December 2021 onwards, we could be looking at a rebuild that could be maybe even longer. Again, they're saying, as you can see, at the timeline, and then if you look up at the top on the right-hand side, the vaccination, where we do population immunity, let's hope so. We do have one of our partners is a group out of Dubai, and they're our financial partners when it comes to our real estate developments. They also have a lot of other relationships. One of them is with a group called the Serum Institute out of India. Serum Institute, you may have heard in passing because they are the manufacturers of the vaccination that was commissioned by AstraZeneca, the UK pharmaceutical group. They have an order for 1 billion first generation vaccines based on the Oxford University COVID-19 vaccination, which seems to be the leading one in the world right now. So we have a front row seat, being that they're part of our family, connections, business family connections. And what's amazing is to watch the speed at to which this is happening. But what we're being briefed about is that the vaccinations that they're going for now are on certain strains of COVID-19, that this thing's mutating quickly. It's a very smart beast. So we're going to see not just one vaccination of population immunity. What we're probably looking at is multiple different strains that need multiple types of vaccinations so that it's not going to be that, one country wins, like with the whole thing that went on this past week with Russia trying to steal, all the hard work that's been done, right? Who knows if that's true or not, but kind of fun, like when you think about it, like, it'd be a cool Netflix movie or something, right? But at the end of the day, this is not about a race that, Moderna or AstraZeneca or any of these pharmaceuticals are first to market in. You've got to invest in them because they're going to populate, they're going to inoculate the entire population of planet Earth. It will be done in phases, and it will be done probably in multiple types of vaccinations by multiple companies, and that's the truth. So when we start to take a look at design, think about that. How long do we need to have a population of 80 people that these restaurant owners have put their pro formas in place to generate cash in order to make money, and now they're down to 20? And this is the type of stuff that we're looking at. I think that Heminger Architects out of San Francisco are doing a masterful job at explaining this, right? Pre-virus. Actually, we like to call it, before COVID, BC. Kind of sounds like prehistoric, which almost makes sense. And here's an exact idea on here. If you look down at the bottom, it says pre-virus occupancy is 84 people, right? 16 to 18 employees. Look at what happens when you do proper, quote unquote, social distancing, which again, scientifically doesn't work, but it makes people feel better. So again, legitimate design. So here we go. How do we start to take into account that we need to have certain types of ordinances and zoning changed on the fly in order for them just to make money with 27 people in their restaurant with only 4 to 6 employees? You start seeing the ramifications of a lot of this stuff, right? So design-wise, it gets really interesting, and it's a business issue, it's a layout issue, it's a health issue, and we got to start working with the governments and make the governments stop working with, at Neanderthal sleep, speeds. I don't need sloths. We need to have people that have, a way of eating outside. That's what these people were looking at for their particular restaurant. Again, 113 people, they're down to 32, right? And this was supposed to open this summer. I'm not in San Francisco. Maybe we can have a scout go out, Damon, and you can report back to see if this particular restaurant even opened, right? But back in March and April, they were scrambling and they're saying, man, we just got to make this thing work. How do we do it? How do we do outdoor seating when the ordinances say that we can't do it? And then what are you going to do? Wait for a city council meeting? There's got to be a better way. We got to start hacking the entire process in order to make this thing work. Here are some preliminary design ideas about how workflow would happen, how you sit at a bar, how do you start making just the wonderful experiences that we were exploring, like, the open kitchen designs of that experience of, from farm to table, types of, restaurants that are now becoming more the norm, and how people interact with each other, right? But what happens when you can only open up with the green people here, right? Sitting at a bar, green people only, right? And then everything else is shut down. And I like the fact that there are really insightful ways of looking at the problems, what the potential solutions are, but we got to keep on doing this, keep on doing this, keep on doing this, because the collision of ideas that we all have and what the hackers are doing right now in our AEC Hackathon online, your idea is great, but when they collide with another idea and create even a better idea, that's what I'm talking about. We have to start rethinking space. This Cala restaurant I thought was also really interesting. How do you actually, start to utilize the outdoor seating in this case to maximize the way that, again, the perception of at least I'm eating in a healthy environment, right? So we took this to heart, and we were already working on a number of different projects in the city of Nashville that BC, or pre-COVID, was the hottest market in the United States for design and construction based on permits pulled, and cranes. It's a remarkable story, mostly due to the rail yard project, which Amazon is putting up their world operations center for all logistics and operations. So a majority of people that are part of operations are moving from Seattle or have moved to move into Nashville. When it's fully blown out, it'll have 10,000 people in a downtown area that's already congested. Imagine that, right? So we went into a mode of, we wanted to take a look at the mobility issues, the stuff that we learned over in China and in the Middle East with our smart cities projects, using American innovations, testing them out, modifying them, and then bringing them back to the US as part of an infrastructure way of improving the built environment. Successful so far, right up until a F5 tornado tore through downtown Nashville just before the lockdown for COVID. I don't know if everyone remembers that. Wiped out 1/4 of downtown. Now, it was up in the Northwest Quadrant, which was where one of our projects was, well, proposed projects. We were underneath design review at the time. And what we decided to do was to, because everything was locked down then and all these projects were put on hold, and even the reconstruction, or at least the recovery process of the tornado. I mean, there's still parts of Nashville that are still under rubble, right? Because we just haven't been able to get there yet. So what we decided to do was take a look at what's called opportunity zones. These opportunity zones are all throughout the US. This current administration put it into place that are the equivalent, kind of quasi-equivalent of economic zones, special economic zones that provide tax incentives and other types of incentives to get work and jobs back into blighted areas of urban environments. So one of those areas is called the East Bank, and it already had one of our projects, which was the redevelopment of Nissan Stadium, the home of the Super Bowl runner-ups this past year, the Tennessee Titans. So this whole opportunity zone, or qualified opportunity zone, is all up along the western bank of the Cumberland River, directly across the street from downtown. So they actually have pedestrian bridges and whatnot that lead you right into the honky tonks and everything on Broadway and Second North Avenue, and just all this great stuff. But they wanted to bring an entertainment zone into Nissan Stadium because it's old, and they want to host the Super Bowl there one day. So in addition to building out all the hotel rooms that you need for the Super Bowl, they were going to redo this anyway. Well, our partners in Dubai said, well, we think that the second largest business after tourism and music, because tourism and music, Music City, USA, everything, Nashville, that's way up here. But what they're really known for, business-wise, is healthcare. Vanderbilt University being one of the leading one of the nation's leading research hospitals, right? And of course, the Center for Regional healthcare units like Methodist, Baptist, and others, and also insurance companies, healthcare insurance, are all headquartered in Nashville. So they already had a base of healthcare stuff. We also took our lead from trying to understand what the parameters were for bringing manufacturing, specifically PPE, vaccines, and for other pharmaceuticals back into the US to help with the supply chain issues that everyone was up against when people realized that we may have outsourced a little too much to places like China. Again, not the politics involved, but the actuality is that there are now incentives to build factories on US soil and help subsidize those products, because the US rate of labor is 20 times, at least 20 times that of any other place that is manufacturing things like gloves and 3-ply masks and stuff like that. So we went into the mode of saying, right, what would happen if we could take this entire economic zone from Interstate 24, which you can see outlined in red, up to Interstate 64 and come straight down the Cumberland River and wind up at Carl Icahn's steel plant, which we were going to retrofit anyway, because we had already had approved through a public referendum to implement a public autonomous vehicle transportation system. And that was going to be our Grand Central Station, right at the bottom of this opportunity zone. So we pulled it all together, and we were calling it World Healthcare City. It will be a city within a city with it will have an entertainment zone. It's a live, work, play, learn environment. It will have everything from general assemblies for the centers of excellence dealing with virology, childhood cancer, mental health, you name it. It's an $8 billion phase one. We are now through the conceptual master planning phase into feasibility and getting into the whole notion of doing this as a private entity, not using the incentives that are being given through the opportunity zones. And the reason why is because we're bringing manufacturing. We already have commitments for 9 factories on this space that are being subsidized and incentivized by the US Department of Commerce through the Select USA program. Why? Because most of these factories are from foreign direct investment, which is interesting. So it's creating American jobs and creating a supply chain that will be part of what we're looking at as a city within a city, a smart city, but focused in on the world of healthcare. So this is, it's gained an amazing amount of momentum. You can see why we're really busy right now, because this involves both the design phase, construction, the business modeling, and then the sustainability, both economically and environmentally, of doing this right. This will be totally independent from the National Electric Service or the TVA. It will be its own energy world. We actually have this project at a point where we have a huge amount of interest from the general public as well, who want to add their conversations into the space, that this isn't just going to be like a gated community for people that drive BMWs and their doctors. This will be a microcosm of our social contract with the citizens of Nashville. And we can go into detail. I'll probably do a breakout of this, at a later time and really delve into this. But this is a direct result of the COVID plan, just so you guys know. Again, all this stuff will be up online. You can actually see some of our scope. Although this is confidential, this is now public knowledge. We also do have, we're looking at taking some unbuilt masterpieces. This one from Frank Lloyd Wright being our General Assembly. We're working right now with the Taliesin Fund to work out that. Because it's on the river, we're looking at very, very interesting ideas that were never built. And could we modify them? Could we expand upon these shoulders of giants? And the UN itself, what does this thing really look like? What's it trying to do? So what we're seeing in the trends of the new normal is this. I have about 10 minutes. I'm going to just rifle through this. But because of COVID, what are we seeing? What are we doing? Again, you don't have to follow this. This isn't gospel, but it's one viewpoint of what one organization is doing. We are anticipating over time, within our lifetime, the elimination of cash. That's already being spearheaded by China by making the RMB digital. So this isn't Apple Pay. This isn't just WeChat Pay or Alipay. This is a legitimate government saying our currency is now digital. So that is now true. It's being traded that way, and the rest of the world's going to play catch up, including the United States. Another new normal, we know that 3-ply masks will be in your closet the same way that you may have, a package of toilet paper, an extra box of tissues, or paper towel. That is the new normal. Not that we're going to need it all the time, but the next outbreak of the flu, guess what? We're going to be into that world of, put on your mask, you may have it, whatever. Over time, we will find a ubiquitous testing kit methodology, not just for COVID-19, but for everything. We are looking right now at a healthcare revolution. People are going to want their families and themselves to be safe and protect them from infecting others and vice versa. Again, all this is just to create runways so that we can get to a vaccination, because this is about preparing ourselves for the next pandemic, which means that on site, we have 3 big things that we all have to do. Anyone that's involved in the AEC space should really take this to heart, that we got to eliminate uncertainty. A trade that goes onto one site that's very, very strict with doing, thermometer checks and doing somewhat social distancing, but at least wearing masks, right? But you're going onto another site and it's loosey-goosey. This whole thing falls apart. You've got to eliminate the uncertainty. So there almost needs to be like an OSHA standard for what we're talking about here without inhibiting rights. So again, a conversation, you don't have to agree 100% on either side of it, but we've got to find that common ground. The idea of establishing a unified culture as well, where of course you just do it. There's a reason why you have to wear, steel-toed boots, right? Do you even think about it anymore? Do you go there with your flip-flops? No. Same thing with COVID-related things and pandemic and viruses and things like that. And this means that the world of hacking, my goodness, the idea of remote information communications technologies, the ICT world and wearable tech, we saw a lot of this, upwards of, 5-10 years ago. We've seen companies come and go, the smart helmets, safety helmets, all this other stuff. It may need a time right now to reimagine what this thing looks like, because we're heading fast towards there. We also are looking at the age of the robotics. The work that's being done with demolition is remarkable. Even with these small mom and pop firms, being able to remotely control, especially with the demolition pieces, which have, workers' comp issues and all sorts of things. These now are becoming commonplace. It's not about getting a bunch of guys with a bunch of sledgehammers up, picking them up, early in the morning at, your local convenience store, and they're going to just knock the hell out of something to destroy it. There's a methodology now. There are best practices. There are ways of doing things safely that are just remarkable. We're also taking a look at our friends, over at Hensel Phelps, our friends over at Boston Dynamics, and their Spot, their dog, their robotic dog. This stuff is real now. Yes, for $75,000, it can be yours, but holy cow, from 3-5 years ago to where we are now, look for this to be more commonplace, because we are now at a point where robotics are now part of the solution. It's not a nice to have. In certain cases, they're going to be must-haves, because another thing, another fallout from this time, this COVID period of time is, well, you thought we had lack of labor before COVID? Jeez, we're going to be forced into industrializing our industry faster than we even thought. And finally, we're taking a strong look at this world of digital assets, that they're not just about controlling the asset, the facility, and the building at the end of the day. We're now at a point where we are looking at it as a digital asset that can be collided with other industries. We've had some good fortune in working with the Disney Corporation. What you're seeing on the left is how Walt Disney created, the way of creating depth in the 1930s and 1940s for things like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and all that stuff that changed the face of animation. The work right now that Jon Favreau is doing with The Mandalorian for Disney Plus is remarkable, because taking what Disney did way back when, instead of looking down with shooting these beautiful depths of animation, what would happen if we went horizontal and created these rooms like you're seeing here in the Mandalorian documentary that's up on YouTube, about creating these digital rooms, these screens that do 360, or in his case, these cubes of 40-foot walls that also have a ceiling that also is a projection unit. What that does is that immerses the actor not into a green screen, because green screen, as everyone knows, takes a long time to get all the different details right, which is why at the end of every type of Avenger movie and everything, half the movie is the credits of all the people working on the special effects, right? That's green screen technology, because you've got to get everything from the reflection of the light on a shiny helmet to whatever, right? By immersing themselves inside of this Epic Games and Unreal Engine environment, Jon Favreau is taking entire digital assets and literally on the fly creating these worlds, these immersive metaverses that are now commonplace. It's how he's just finishing up production right now for Mandalorian Season 2, which will be released in September on Disney Plus. So by talking with the people at Epic Games and Unreal, by talking with the guys at Industrial Light and Magic and seeing how this stuff works, I mean, look at this. It's like he's really on Tatooine. But yet again, because everything is now immersive in this, we now have the idea that you can have the reflection already just in the shot. Why? Because the reflection is coming from a real source inside of an immersive environment. So it's like doing a film shoot, a TV shoot inside of a game. So this is like, okay, next generation type of stuff. So what we're talking about with them is taking a lot of the work that we've done on our photorealistic environments, our urban environments, things like Times Square, the Champs-Élysées, Trafalgar Square, places like that, that you do not need to now think about you have to be on site because of now all the restrictions, right? But what would happen is if we could bring the site to you, and those digital assets that we're just sitting on that were really cool during design and construction, and facility managers may or may not use it over the life cycle of the project. Why not put those assets to use? Put it into a product mode rather than a project. And I think that's the biggest thing I'd like to leave with you guys, that we should really start thinking about, that we are in a data-driven, human-centric environment now. That we got to keep the biggest story in focus, no worries, but the collision of industries is really where the opportunities are. That we are now in this world that we've been conditioned to be in the world of projects forever. The projects is what pays the bills. But we're fast moving into the industrialization of the construction industry, which means we have to hack our own thinking and say, I think we're in the world of products. And those products can be also digital. Over time, mark my words, the digital asset that represents the built environment asset will be more valuable over time than the physical asset. The digital asset will have more value over time than the physical asset it represents. That's a truth. And we're actually right now in a great time to think like that, that we've been so tactical about getting stuff done. Why? Because holy cow, what an economy we were in pre-COVID. Now we have time. We're being given the gift of time to start thinking strategically. So let's celebrate the absurdity of our industry. We do absurd things. Here's for instance, just something to leave you with. One of the studies that we've done about mechanical systems, learning how that works, how we could stop the spread by using things like pressurization. Interesting, right? And then where does that air come from? Because we do a lot of sterilization in our air handling units, either UV or ionization, depending on the usage. But sucking air in, the fresh air intake, where's the majority of our fresh air intakes in the world in urban environments that we've designed? Street level. And we wonder why we have sick buildings. Holy cow. Can we just do one thing? One thing that the COVID period's done, stop putting fresh air intake where there's no fresh air. Thank you. The absurdity of our construction industry. So with that, I want to just say thank you, Catherine, for definitely hurting the kittens on this one. And just thanks to Damon and the rest of the organization, and to you at the AEC Hackathon for listening. Again, it's a viewpoint. As you can tell, I have no opinions. I'm not passionate about this at all.
Not at all, Paul.